Dogworks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dogworks. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
Hi, this is Alex Stein, co-host of Mushing Radio on Dogworks Radio. We just completed our first storytelling season on the 1925 Serum Run. Almost 100 years later, the 1925 Serum Run is something that is still inspirational, amazing, and in many ways larger than life. We've gathered all of these episodes together on one page to make it easier for you to listen to them in order. Just go to dogworksradio.com/serumrun. That's SERUMRUN, no space, dogworksradio.com/serumrun. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to Dogworks Radio at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever it is that you go to listen to podcasts.
Start your day tomorrow with The Daily Dog with Michelle Forto, the morning podcast on Dogworks Radio. Apple Podcast reviewer Patty Christensen calls it funny, smart, and filled with all the info I want to know about dogs. I love this show. Wake up with The Daily Dog, available on Dogworks Radio on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your shows.
Radio Free Palmer, 89.5 KVRF, presents Mushing Radio, hosted by Robert Forto. Mushing Radio is about dog-powered sports, living in the Great White North, and mushing. Visit our website at mushingradio.com. Here is your host, Robert Forto.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert Forto and you're listening to the 2018 Iditarod coverage here on Mushing Radio. You can find us locally here on KVRF 89.7 in the Mat-Su Valley. You can also find us over on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you find your podcast. And you can also find all of our archived episodes over on dogworksradio.com. And fresh from a flight from Anchorage is our friend and co-host Alex Stein. Alex, how's it going?
It's going great, Robert. I have to tell you, it's a bit of a culture shock after being up in Alaska with all of the beautiful mountains and the snow to be back here where it's relatively warm and there's no snow anywhere.
And it was an absolutely beautiful weekend. I know there was quite a bit of snow on Saturday that caused some havoc for all of the fans and spectators and even a musher or two trying to get out of Anchorage with a big snowstorm. But man, the restart yesterday was an absolutely beautiful day up here in Willow. Blue skies, perfect temperatures. The trails were nice and packed. I was just out on them today, and it looks like, I tell you what, it looks like not a single dog team ran over the first 9 or 10 miles of the trail. It is a pristine trail out there, at least heading out towards the Big Sioux and the Yitna River.
Yeah, and you know, it's a very welcome change from the last, gosh, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years when there's been very, very light and sometimes almost no snow cover in the first part of the race. So it's great to have had as much snow up in Alaska and in South Central over the past month so that the trails are looking pretty good, at least for what we've seen so far. You know, we've gotten used to people saying the first third of the race is awful, and it's been really, really hard on a lot of mushers, on a lot of sleds, not so bad for the dogs, but, you know, and we've had to switch the restart to Fairbanks a couple of times, but to be back on the classic Iditarod Southern route is really just wonderful this year.
And it is, and it looks like everybody is off and running on the trail. We have teams from pretty much Squetna all the way up to, let me zoom up here, all the way up to Roan already. Ray Reddington is in Roan, followed by Mitch Seavey, Ryan Reddington. It's usually Ray up there in the top few spots. So Ryan Reddington, Mitch Seavey, Ray Reddington Jr., Wade Mars, Nick Pettit, Yor Olsom, and Jesse Holmes. Man, that is a who's who of dog mushing right there in the top 6 or 7 people, isn't it?
It really is. And we've talked in the past about the so-called rabbits who will try to get out in front of the pack early in the race. And in the past, you've had the phenomenon where the rabbits will get very, very far ahead early on and then pretty much lose steam and not have much left in the tank after a few days. But this year, what's different is we have some of the people who, have been rabbits in the past, but then we also have some teams that I expect, and I think most people following the race expect, are going to finish very, very highly. Teams like Wade Mars and Mitch Seavey and Nick Pettit and Yor. And so to see those people running right up at the front with the people who are trying to be rabbits at the beginning, I think means that we're going to see another very, very fast race this year.
I do too as well, and I know we talked a little bit about in one of our previous episodes Jesse Holmes, who is a very fast musher. He has very fast dogs, and he's very fast himself. He's a mountain runner. He does marathons and all that sort of stuff. He is a rookie, and he's currently in 7th place, and either in Rainy Pass or just getting ready to leave there. And then just a couple of spots below him in the top 10 is also another rookie, Matt Hall. He is a previous Yukon Quest champion. I guess he won last year. This year was won by Alan Moore. So another very fast musher with Matt Hall. And then we have, right now, rounding out the top 10 is Jessie Royer, who is our top woman in the crew, and then followed very quickly by Allie Zirkle as well. So yeah, again, a who's who of mushing there. And then way down at the bottom, several checkpoints back, we have Tara Cicatello, I believe is how you say it, and then we have Tom Schoenberger, and then Peter Fleck, and Tim Mutu, and Scott White, Jason Stewart, and Anja Radano, and it is not unexpected to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those of the bottom 8 or 9 folks there are rookies. So that's pretty typical, isn't it, Alex?
It really is. And for a lot of rookies, especially rookies who are maybe running a puppy team for a larger competitor, the goal certainly isn't to win the race. The goal isn't even necessarily to be in the top 20 or the top half of the race. The goal is to finish the race, to get the dogs used to having good runs, to let these dogs, who often are yearlings or younger dogs, less experienced dogs, to let them have a really good experience out on the trail, so that the next year they can, the more successful ones can be part of a more competitive team, and they already have had the good experience of running on the Iditarod Trail. And then as they get more mature and a little bit stronger, they can run it a little bit faster.
Right. And unfortunately, we already have one scratch in the race, and it was Zoya Denur. She scratched in Skwetna, which is just the second checkpoint on the trail, and that usually means a couple of things. Either number one, she isn't feeling well, maybe she has the flu bug or something like that, or her dogs are not feeling well, they aren't eating appropriately, or maybe they had a bit of a bug before they left. That's a speculation on my part. I have not had a chance to read any of the press releases or anything like that, but just less than 100 miles into the race, it's pretty atypical for a team to scratch. But on that note, you will also find some folks that like to scratch very early in the race, in particular before they head over that Alaska range, where it's really a tough section of the trail, isn't it?
It really is. And for Zoya, usually when teams scratch, the official reason given, and the reason that will go out in the press release, is either that they scratched for the good of their dog team, or they scratched for some reason related to the health of the musher. So in Zoya's case this year, it was that she scratched for reasons of her own health. And I had heard that there was a medication that she needed or felt that she would need further on in the race that she did not have with her, and she felt that it would endanger her and therefore endanger her dog team to proceed up the trail without having what she needed.
Again, speculation on my part, but just imagine all of the logistics and packing and, making sure everything's ready to go. I would assume it's not very difficult to leave, a bottle of medication sitting on the medicine cabinet there at home or whatever. It could be something so easy to look over, but so important as they work their way down the trail.
And just a reminder again for people who aren't as familiar with the Iditarod, this is not like in, if you're in Philadelphia and you have to get something to New York, there is no FedEx that you can call that will make a next day delivery to Rainy Pass, for example. So pretty much if you have forgotten something and you didn't put something in your drop bags, it is very, very difficult to get something delivered to you on time and in a timely manner when you're out on the Iditarod Trail because you are off the road system, and in many cases there's no reliable delivery system of any kind. There are airplanes that come in and out, but sometimes if the weather is bad, they don't fly.
Right. So I want to get a little bit of a fan's opinion of this or fan's perspective in regards to that. As we've seen over the last few years, some of these folks do scratch really early. And of course, there are always extenuating circumstances. But I think a lot of just the casual fans just don't quite understand just how difficult it is just to get to the starting line. You know, the hundreds, if not thousands of miles of training, all of the money and expenses and, dealing with the sponsors and all of that comes with it. That, it's a tremendous feat just to get to the starting line, not only for the ceremonial, but also the restart in Willow. And one case in particular that I'm remembering is Ed Stelstra, I believe is how you say his name. He drove up here from Michigan and ended up having a pretty bad concussion, if I remember correctly, like the day before or something like that, and had to scratch right after the ceremonial start. Do you remember that? And if so, what are your thoughts of that? And what are your sort of overwhelming thoughts as a fan for folks that end up having to call it quits really early in the race?
I do remember that. I don't remember the details of it, but I remember that it was a very sad thing. But I also admired him in going through the and not wanting to disappoint his Iditarider, and wanting to be able to give the Iditarider that experience in Anchorage, which I thought was very remarkable. I want to say that it is so easy for us as fans and for, the so-called armchair mushers to be very critical of people who are actually out on the trail. And it's something that I try to be very aware of, and I try not to indulge in very much because there's 1,000 things that have to go right in order for you to have a successful Iditarod run. And if you have 3 or 4 things that go wrong, it can really ruin your chance of finishing the race or finishing the race and doing well. So, you can say, just taking this case of Zoya's, you can say, well, it's her own fault for not making sure that this was there. But on the other hand, I know, and I'm sure you know even better than I do, that when you're planning this, when you're trying to coordinate all the logistics of an Iditarod run, there are hundreds of things that you have to keep track of. And, if one of them falls through the cracks, I'm sure almost every musher, even the top mushers, have things that they forget each year. And hopefully it's not something that's critical. So I'm reluctant to be too judgmental about anyone for scratching. And the other thing, and you've made this point many, many times in the past, and I think it's something that's very important to take to heart, is that scratching is not something that most mushers take lightly. They don't want to scratch. They would rather keep going. And if they make the decision to scratch, it's because they've thought of all of the alternatives, including waiting more, including, trying to drop dogs or rejigger your team or change strategies or something like that. They've really gone through all of this thought process and considered what the alternatives are. And if the alternatives aren't good or aren't better than what they have, then they make the decision to scratch. But I don't think that it's I don't think that it's something that almost anyone makes on the spur of the moment. I don't think it's something that people make lightly. So if a musher decides to scratch, I think we owe it to them to assume that there's a really, really good reason why they've done it. And usually in these days of social media, we'll find out in a day or two, or sometimes a few hours, what that reason is. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes people choose to keep that to themselves. But I really think that we as fans and followers of this race have respect for the mushers and their decision-making process.
And right, just one more point on that, at least a little bit of a musher's perspective on forgetting things, on the trail or the like. I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine and I entered a mid-distance race. It was a 300-mile race, and there's a thing that in any sport where you kind of get in the groove or in the zone, so to speak. And he is a guy that runs every run, every race, every time he's out with his dogs. His getting in the zone is listening to music. He always has his iPhones on and with his iPod or whatever. And on this particular race, he forgot his headphones in the dog truck, and he didn't realize it till after he was well onto the trail, and it just sort of snowballed on him. It may sound stupid, you can do a race without music or without your iPod or whatever, but that was his way of getting in the groove, and things just sort of went downhill from there. He didn't have his headphones, and he started second guessing himself. What else did I forget? So on and so forth. And he ended up scratching for that very reason, because he forgot something at home. Now, of course, it wasn't medication like you said with Zoya's case, but anytime, sometime it might be that lucky rabbit's foot that you have in your pocket, or that picture of your kids or whatever it takes to get you in that zone. And if you forget that, things can happen very quickly, can't they?
They really can. And you sort of touch on another issue that I want to just briefly mention, which is that a lot of mushers are very superstitious people. We, as a society, we've kind of moved beyond superstition in a lot of ways, but I think that mushers tend to have things that they really want to have with them. A lot of mushers, or they have things that they really like to do in a certain order, or they like to, they have rituals or ways of doing things. And if they can't do things that way, it just starts to feel like something is a little bit off.
Right, for sure. All right, Alex, we just have a few minutes left. We are going to do our musher profile of the day. Who is on tap?
So our musher profile today is Tara Chikatela, who is from Buffalo, New York. She's a rookie this year, and she is currently in the Red Lantern position in Skwetna. And I don't want to get political about this, but in the past year, we've had, people talking about the Me Too movement and things like that, and ways of empowering women. And one of the things that is generally talked about in sort of wider societal terms is the idea that things will start to change when women start mentoring women. And one of the cool things about Tara is that she is actually being mentored and trained by a female musher. We've seen a lot of female mushers who come up who are mentored and trained by male mushers, because although there have been a lot of female mushers over the years, and some like Libby Riddles and Susan Butcher have done very well and won the race, it's still a male-oriented sport. One of the things I've always loved about Iditarod is that men and women compete on an equal basis. There's the women have to run just as far as the men. They don't get, they don't only have to run 400 miles because they're women. They have to run the full 1,049 miles. So Tara is from Buffalo, New York. She grew up sort of near where Noah Pereira is from. And she got her start volunteering at KNOM. And for people who are relatively new to Iditarod, KNOM is a great radio station in Nome, and they have really terrific coverage of the Iditarod race, as well as some very interesting social pieces and personality profiles for people in the area. And it's a really, really great source of news, particularly when the race gets towards the end. So I would very much recommend that people check out KNOM. Anyway, Tara volunteered at KNOM, and she had an English degree, and she moved out to Nome because she wanted to work for this radio station and get some real life experience in radio. And while she was there, she covered the Iditarod, and she was asked to handle for a local musher, and then started handling for Kristen Bacon, who herself had handled for and was mentored by Jeff King. And so this year she is running the Bacon's Acres team. And Bacon's Acres, I believe, is kind of an affiliate kennel of Jeff King's Husky Homestead. They're closely associated, but they are a separate kennel operation. Kristen moved to Alaska as a physical therapist. This is Kristen Bacon, moved to Alaska to be a physical therapist. So she wasn't able to train full time as many up and coming mushers or musher handlers were, and therefore had to rely heavily on Tara, whom she hired as a handler. And Tara's first qualifier was the Cusco 300 in 2015. Over the next couple years, she went on to complete her other qualifying races. This is her first time running the Iditarod, and she said that her goal is just to finish and to give the dogs a really good experience, which, as we've discussed earlier this episode and in many past episodes, is what most rookies want to do. They want to finish the race. They want to make sure that they have a good time and the dogs have a good time. So Tara has a really great attitude towards the sport and towards her own performance. And we wish her very well, because it's an amazing thing that she's doing. And she was asked if she worried that, she's still relatively young. I believe she's 26. If she was worried that she might have trouble getting another job after working as a musher handler for several years. And she said, well, I'm still young enough. And a lot of people who are in their 20s, they have service industry jobs, or they have waitressing jobs, or they have other things that they do, and then they change careers afterwards. So hopefully she is someone who will be in the sport for a long time. But if not, I have no doubt that the experiences that she's gained working for Kristen and being a handler, as well as running the Iditarod, are going to serve her very, very well, whatever she does.
Alex, we had talked briefly off air about our musher profile of the evening, and I didn't recognize her name until I saw her face. And I had the pleasure of meeting Tara a couple of weeks ago. I was over at a friend of mine's house, Pam Aviza, who is on the same property as Kristen here in Big Lake. And I was over there borrowing a couple of Pam's dogs to use in our upcoming winter expedition that we do at UAA. And I got a chance to meet Tara. We shook hands by headlamp, as we often do as mushers. And I caught a glimpse of her there. And I tell you what, even a couple of weeks before the race, she was all business. She was ready to go. She didn't have much time to chit-chat. She was moving dogs around. And it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when I was over there. So I thought that was a nice determination that we saw, that early on, well before the race start. And another comment I would like to make about Tara is on her official bio on Iditarod.com. It says, Tara lists her hobbies and interests as, quote, dancing, beachcombing, and making people smile. What kind of interests are those? I think that is a great example and a great way to live life, doing those things that make people happy, dancing and beachcombing, and of course everybody likes to have a smile once in a while. I really like that little profile of hers.
Yeah, me too. And she's one of these people who obviously she has a lot of challenges ahead of her running her first Iditarod, but her attitude, and I've seen a couple of interviews with her attitude each time is just very, very focused and very, very positive.
Yeah, looking forward to following her on the trail, as well as a lot of other rookies in the race this year. All of them have such interesting stories, and I have no idea who you have for us on tap. I'm always surprised about our musher profile of the evening. Alex, we're just about out of time here. What are we talking about tomorrow, as I guess it would be day 2 on the trail for the 2018 Iditarod?
Well, we have teased and we've promised that we were going to give our top 5 predictions, but we have not done that yet. So I think perhaps tomorrow we'll be giving our top 5 predictions.
That sounds good. I think we've, like you said, we've teased a little bit, especially if you've listened to the previous episodes upcoming towards Iditarod. We've talked about some of our favorites that are doing very well in the early stages of the race already. So I'm looking forward to that as well. We also, Alex, got a comment over on our Mushing Radio page on Facebook. They would like for us to talk about the Canadians in the race, and in particular, a story that one has never won from Canada. I did not know that. We've never had an Iditarod champion from Canada. So that might be something we cover in the coming days as well, because as always, there's always things happening, not just here in the U.S., but many nations are in the field as well, aren't they?
They were great Canadian mushers. Who are always fun to watch and always fun to follow. So we'll definitely be taking that to heart and talking more about the Canadians.
Very good.
Future episodes.
So, guys, if you like what you hear, please leave us a comment over on our social media. You can find us over on Dogworks Radio. You can also find us on dogworksradio.com. And if you like to get our episodes on any device, make sure you hit subscribe on anywhere you find your podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or iHeartRadio or just about anywhere. And that way you will get a episode on your device as soon as it's downloaded. So you won't have to wait till morning on your morning commute. You can listen to it late into the evening, depending on where you're listening from. But we look forward to hearing from all of you. I think people are listening all over the world, as always, aren't they?
They are. And one of the great things about podcasting in general, and this podcast in particular, is that I know that there are people who follow mushing all over the world. There's an active mushing contingent in places like South Africa and Australia, New Zealand, and places you might not think of as mushing friendly. But we want to give a quick shout out to those people all around the world, fans in Europe, and of course, all our fans in the U.S. and Canada.
Very good. Alex, it's been a pleasure again. We will talk tomorrow around the same time, and looking forward to hearing more stories about the 2018 Iditarod. Talk again soon, okay?
Okay, thanks, Robert.
Thank you. On behalf of my co-host, Alex Stein, this is Robert Forto for Mushing Radio. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Did you know that Alaska Dog Works trains service dogs for those in need throughout North America? Each and every service dog that is trained through the Lead Dog Service Dog Program and Michelle Forto and her team has an individual training plan. We train for autistic, mobility, psychiatric, and PTSD for our soldiers for service work. If you know of someone that may need a service dog, please take a moment and check out Alaska Dog Works on social media and at alaskadogworks.com.
If you like our podcast, there are a few things you can do. You can take a couple of minutes and go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also check out all of our Dogworks Radio sponsors and promotions in our show notes. Another thing you can do is go over to Facebook, like our Facebook page, and one last thing, please tell all of your friends by spreading the word about Dogworks Radio. Thank you so much for listening to us. We really appreciate you.
Dogworks Radio is produced by Robert Forto. Logo art by Angry Squirrel Studios. Dogworks Radio is produced in conjunction with KVRF 89.7 in Palmer, Alaska.
For dog training advice, you can contact Alaska Dogworks at 907-841-1686 or visit their website at alaskadogworks.com. If you have a show idea or would like to be a guest, please contact us by sending an email to live@dogworksradio.com.